and welcome back. Thank you for joining me on today's case. Today's case we will be covering the topic of John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated the 16th President of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, and we will be going over his 12-day manhunt and what exactly happened. I actually brought these for Halloween, however I never actually ended up using them, so... So, to start with, who was Abraham Lincoln? So, Abraham was born on the 12th of February in 1809 in a log cabin in Kentucky. It's a very big difference to how he's probably well known, to think that he was born in a log cabin. He was the second child to Thomas Lincoln and Nancy Hanks. He had a fairly normal upbringing. They lived on a farm, so he did quite a lot of labour work. Because he was quite tall, he was 6'4", that he was very athletic, and some sources said that he was good with an axe. In 1839, he met his wife, Mary Todd, and they actually got married in 1842 on the 4th of November. They also went on to have 4 children, who were Robert, Edward, who was known as Eddie, William, who was known as Willie, and Thomas, who was known as Tad, which is quite a cute story actually. Abraham said when Thomas was born, his head seemed bigger than his body, and it just reminded him of a little tadpole, which I thought was really quite cute. However, unfortunately, Robert was actually the only child who lived to maturity, as the other children died when they were younger. Edward was only 4 or 5 when he actually passed of tuberculosis. William was around the age of 12 when he passed due to fever. Had got to age 18 before he had heart failure, which is kind of bizarre because nowadays you don't really hear about 18-year-olds getting heart failure. This was back in the 1800s, so medicine definitely wasn't as far as it is now. Now, Abraham was largely self-educated. I found that really interesting when I was learning about him, and he actually only ever really got about a year proper education in his whole life, and that was really just to learn to read and write. And as he grew older, he had a love for books and poems and scriptures, and he liked to go see plays and things like that, so he seemed very creative and into the book side rather than the labour and work side. So he taught himself everything he knew, and that was how he learned. He learned through the books, which is kind of bizarre because nowadays no one could do that and just be qualified. And then he actually became a lawyer through reading law books, which once again, nowadays if you did that, you definitely wouldn't be qualified as a lawyer. How easy would that be? So I thought that was really interesting as well. But he was very self-taught, so he seemed like a very disciplined person to teach yourself all of that. He was elected to be the 16th President of the United States on the 4th of March 1861, and he remained president until he was assassinated on the 15th of April 1865, and he was only actually aged 56, which is still really young. Abraham Lincoln was widely known for his leadership during the American Civil War, where he preserved the Union, and he's also very well known for his abolishment of slavery. He put an end to slavery on the 1st of January 1863 with the Emancipation Proclamation, I hope I said that right, and he said that all persons held as slaves within the rebellious state are and henceforward shall be set free. And 3 million slaves were actually set free during that time. Now, that wasn't, unfortunately, the end of slavery. It did take a little bit longer. However, that was the first big step. So he was very well respected in the people of colour's community, as they were glad that somebody was taking action for their people and putting a stop to something that was so inhumane. So next is, who is John Wilkes Booth? He's quite famous too actually, off of his own merit before he even assassinated Abraham. So John was actually born on the 10th of May in 1838 in Bel Air, Maryland. He was actually the 9th child out of 10 children. Now, I don't know about anyone else. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love kids, but I could not imagine having 10 of them. That's just crazy. But then I guess in those days, obviously most kids didn't make it to adult age because of diseases and health things, and especially if you were poor, you didn't have the money to get medicine and stuff, so They used to have lots of kids just to see how many of them would survive. His parents are Junius Brutus Booth and Mary Ann Holmes. His father was actually an English actor. They lived in London, however, Junius and Mary moved to Maryland, USA, and then they started having their children. Now, when Booth was young, they said that he was very athletic and popular, and that he became quite skilled at fencing and horsemanship. In those days, that was a good thing. However, he did aspire to follow in his father's footsteps and to become an actor. And they said that he had quite a natural knack for it, and that's when he started pursuing his dream of acting. John made his debut at only age 17 on the 17th of August 1855. He was actually a supporting role of Earl of Richmond of Richard III at Baltimore's Charles Street Theatre, and that was actually the start of his acting career. He went on to act in New York, and he became quite popular. However, John Booth was a supporter of the Southern cause, and he made it very well known that he had a hatred for Abraham, and he made it known his advocacy for slavery as well. Something I also found quite interesting when I was researching John was that he actually went and met with a Romani fortune teller, and she had something quite interesting to say. She read his palm and pronounced that he had a grim destiny ahead, that he was due to have a short, fulfilling life, that he was doomed to die young, and that he was going to meet a very bad end. So what actually happened, and how did it all go down? Well, in the autumn of 1864, Booth had actually began to plan the abduction of Abraham Lincoln. He had managed to recruit several co-conspirators, and throughout the winter of 1864 to 1865, they continued to meet up in Washington, D.C., where they would map out multiple plans on how to abduct the president. But of course, they realised quickly that none of them were actually going to work, and he said that they had to try something else. On the morning of April the 14th, 1865, Booth had heard that the president was going to be at a show in the evening and would be watching the performance of the comedy Our American Cousin. As I said before, he liked to watch shows and he seemed quite artistic, so this was a regular thing for him. At the Ford's Theatre, at around 6 p.m, Booth actually entered the empty theatre and went to the presidential box. He tampered with the outer door so that it would be jammed shut from the inside, and then later on at around 10 to 10:15 he went back and saw that Abraham was essentially unguarded. So John then drew a .44 caliber Derringer and shot Abraham Lincoln in the back of the head. He then fought briefly with Major Henry Rathbone. However, he stabbed him and was able to get away. He jumped over the balcony, and it's quite disputed what he actually said, so I'm not going to include it because there's so many different sources that say he said so many different things. I have linked all of my sources in the description box if you want to have a little read up yourself. He actually landed really heavily on the stage, and apparently he broke his leg. However, some sources dispute that he actually injured it later on. However, we don't really know. And he made his escape into the alleyway where his horse was waiting for him. Lincoln was taken across the street to the Utterson house, who was a lodger, and he rented out houses. They didn't think that they could get to the hospital fast enough, so they laid him diagonally across the bed as he was so tall. They did everything that they could. However, after remaining in a coma for 8 hours, at 7:22 in the morning of April the 15th, Abraham Lincoln was pronounced dead. So, the 12-day manhunt. So, after John had escaped the theatre, he met up with another one of his co-conspirators who had placed an attack on one of the generals as well that night, I believe. His name was David Herold, and they escaped together. They fled through Maryland first, and he only stopped to have his leg treated by Samuel A. Mudd, who was later fined and convicted for conspiracy. Of course, once everyone had heard about the president's death, a massive manhunt ensued, and there was actually a reward for $100,000, which back in the 1800s was a huge amount of money. and would literally change a family's life. Both Booth and Harold hid for several days in a thicket of trees near the Fire Swamp in Maryland, and obviously they had previously packed things ready for a getaway. So they did make a quick pit stop where Booth continued to pick up some guns. I'm pretty sure he had 3 on him when they managed to detain him, I guess. And yeah, so I'm guessing they also probably had food and water, just so that if they ever did go through with anything and they needed to flee, they had kind of like a getaway ready. Booth ended up hiding in a tobacco barn, and on April the 26th, the manhunt was over. The federal troops had caught up with them, and they had arrived at the farm in Virginia, just south of the Rappahannock River. I'm going to put on screen for you now the actual getaway route that goes into a little bit more detail of each place that they stopped. Harold actually gave himself up quite quickly. However, Booth was very insistent that he was not leaving the barn, so they actually set it on fire. I'm pretty sure that would be illegal to do now, but that was their tactic. Did it work? No, the man stayed put. He was not leaving that barn. So, refusing to surrender, of course, Booth was shot. Now, this is where it's kind of disputed on what actually happened. Some people say that they shot him in the neck and he died. Others say that he shot himself, and some others say that he just burnt to death in the building, but that they found his body. However, rumours actually persisted that it wasn't actually Booth that they had killed, or whoever's body that they had found. However, many historians have said that there has not been any evidence to support that theory. However, very recently, literally in 2019, there has been a facial recognition software that has been in the works, ongoing, upgraded, backs a belief that he got away. Now, this recognition test is actually used by law enforcement agencies, so it's obviously of some type of help in investigations. So I don't know how to kind of take this claim. I don't know if they're just trying to stir something up, or if this could actually be the truth, in which case we kind of need to rewrite history. However, then when they were searching through the database for pictures of him, he actually came up as a match against 2 other people. And on April the 15th anniversary of the death of Abraham Lincoln, they proposed that he did not die that day. They said that Booth was not killed in Virginia in the tobacco ban in 1865 by a Union soldier. They said instead he lived 38 years more, and that he actually went under 2 different identities. Now, I'm going to put a photo on screen of John Wilkes Booth and a photo of the other guy who I will tell you about now, and you can kind of tell me if you think that they look similar. It's kind of hard to tell because when John died, he was still quite young, and the other guy's kind of just got a bit of a rounder face, so I'm not too sure if I think they look similar. I mean, I can see the similarities, and it might have just been with age, but let me know if you think that they look similar at all. They said that John Booth fled to Granbury, Texas, and went under the name of John St. Helen before he moved to Oklahoma and took the name of David E. George. Now, this high-tech test has managed to determine that there is a 99% chance that Booth is George and that George is Booth. Now, I don't know how to take this because when you search this up, like, it doesn't come up. However, if you Google it, it's there. So I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it's widely known, which is what inspired me to do this case in the first place, because when I was just doing a little research and I came in 2019, I thought that's so recent, and something like that's not being talked about. I feel like it would have been easy back in the 1800s to just disappear and take another identity. You know, they didn't have the internet like we do. They didn't really have security footage or things like that, things to trace you as a person. So I feel like if there was a way to get out the back of the barn when it was burning, he very well could have. And he very well could have made an escape and continued to live his life until the 1900s. which is kind of bizarre because then we've been told our whole life that he died, and the thing is, there was never any proof of that, ever. So there was actually a upheaval because they wanted to exhume his body and to check, because obviously he should have had a broken leg. However, a judge denied it and said that it wasn't needed, and I feel like if that was done, it would have just cleared up everything. If he left, if he managed to get away, if he died, like, what? I don't understand why it couldn't just be put to bed, but maybe they were trying to hide it, because if he did get away and they were aware of the fact and they knew that they had let the person who had assassinated their president get away, if people had caught on to that, maybe that's why they kept it secret. I'm not too sure, because I don't feel like that would bode well if you found out that the guy who killed the president managed to get away. Now, the craziest thing about this case, and it makes me sad because things could have gone so differently for Abraham. However, the night of his assassination, he actually had the US Secret Service on his desk that night, and if that had been put into place a moment earlier, it could have saved him. This case was actually really fun to look into. I feel like you're taught a lot of things in school as a kid about history and things like that, and I mean, some of you might take it in, some of you might not, but I feel like a lot of it's brushed over and the truth is kind of hidden from you, maybe because you're still in school and they're trying to be careful with young minds. However, actually reading up on it, it's quite astonishing to know that back then in the 1800s that change was trying to happen. Slavery was trying to abolish slavery and free people, and somehow, as we've gone through the ages, racism has just gotten worse. It makes no sense, does it? You would think that with something like that coming into place and all these different laws coming into place as time goes on, that it would diminish. I don't understand it personally. We're all the same. Like, we all have the same blood. We all have the same bones. We all breathe the same air. I mean, unless some of you are lizard people. Let me know. Let me know if you're a lizard person. But it blows my mind that it's still around today and that it only seems to be getting worse. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video as much as I enjoyed filming it. Give me a thumbs up and let me know down in the comments if you want to see something like this again. I feel like it's quite interesting talking about manhunts because you always hear about true crime cases and people are caught not quickly, but they don't necessarily go on a manhunt. So I might do a manhunt month. This is National November, so maybe I should do like a manhunt May. I don't know if I can wait that long though. But let me know if you're interested in any more manhunt videos. Let me know in the comments if you think John Wilkes Booth got away, or if you think he was shot and killed or burned in the barn in 1865. Also, let me know if you ever learnt about this in school. I'd be interested to hear how everybody was taught differently, because I know some schools teach, especially in different countries as well, teach history differently. So it's quite interesting to see the narrative that are being put on our kids' minds when it may not actually be the truth. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe so you can watch my upcoming videos. And if you're interested, I do actually have a playlist for Halloween where I uploaded 2 videos over Halloween, and I've just started a National November playlist which I will be adding this one to as well. I'm going to put my devil ears back on. So I hope you enjoyed and that I will see you next time. As always, I want you all to stay very safe out there. Sending you all of my love, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.